Happy Wednesday afternoon. This is Hilary Zalman with Boca's Briefcase on the Boca Raton Tribune, where we can bring you current affairs and legal topics that are going on in our community. Thank you to the Boca Raton Tribune for creating this local platform where we can bring on special guests. Today, we're going to be talking about the commercial real estate market. And I want to do a special shout out. Hi, Ellie Key. We have a 7-year-old watching us today. So hi, Ellie. How are you? So I've received a lot of questions. I'm also, I work with Zalman Law, and we handle a lot of commercial real estate issues. And a lot of people call and they say, hey, Hilary, there's a moratorium on evictions. Does that apply to the commercial market, commercial cases? No. When Governor DeSantis issued Executive Order 20-94, that moratorium was on specific and certain types of residential evictions, which we'll talk about on a different show. But it doesn't apply to the commercial market. And so commercial evictions, commercial damages, those are going forward in terms of litigation. But we want to take a step back. Before we get into litigation, let's talk about renewing a lease or signing a lease and maybe some really important provisions. I'd like to go over 6 of them with our special guests and try to avoid ever ending up in the litigation end, which has been facing attorneys like myself and other attorneys. So we've got a great guest here today, Stephen Mossini, who's been in this business over a decade. He is in the commercial and residential market, and he's almost a South Florida native, being here over 22 years. He's worked on notable projects in our own community, from the Boca Center to Atlantic Avenue, Las Olas Riverfront, and probably a warehouse right next to you. Not assuming you are right next to a warehouse to our viewers, but if you were, Stephen probably did the commercial broker deal on it. Stephen, welcome to the panel.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Really appreciate being here. Thank you for the opportunity as well.
No problem. So usually we have like multiple guests, but and I just act more as sort of a questionnaire. But today, since we're both in the same market, we're going to have a panel with each other because we're dealing with a lot of really timely commercial market issues. So let's start a little with the real estate market. Where do you see with COVID-19 and whatnot, how is it affecting the commercial real estate market, and where is it going? We talked about the residential a couple of weeks ago, but we didn't hit on the commercial.
So it's uncharted waters right now. There's a lot going on, and the commercial industry is basically broken down into a few different sectors. You have the industrial warehouse industry, you have the multifamily industry, you have office space, retail, and then the hospitality industry. Now, each of them play their own role, but everything is affected almost directly and somewhat indirectly. When one domino falls, the rest may follow.
Well, we were talking yesterday too, and you were mentioning that there might be now a square foot price differential happening as a direct result of COVID. What's going on with the pricing? Is it going up? Is it going down?
So in the industrial warehouse market, price per square foot for properties going on the market and being sold have gone up tremendously, for the reason that businesses are now changing their model to social distancing. And if you're not a retail location, you don't have the public walking in, and rents are cheaper. You get more square footage for less price. So a lot of my clients, a lot of people that were in a retail space are now moving to a flex space or industrial warehouse space. They have more room, less interaction with people, and they can get more done and save a lot of money.
So those prices are going up. So tenants lose a little leverage in negotiations, or I'm sorry, not even tenants, property owners that are going to purchase it too are going to have a little less leverage there.
Yeah, it's the time to get in. If you have, during the 3 or 4 months that we've been in this isolation period, if you've been meeting with your partners or whoever the powers that be to make the decision to do something different to survive, should be in the conversation if it hasn't already.
And I also want to mention, if anyone's watching this, a potential owner, landlord, or tenant, if you do type in a question, we'll try to get to it on today's panel. So feel free to ask a question if you have any. What about now retail and office space? Is that the same? I would think that retail would be suffering.
Yeah, so we'll start with office and then we'll go to retail. So we'll go kind of trickle down. Office is definitely affected right now. The biggest issue is a lot of large corporations are having all their employees work from home. And there's pretty much two types of employees. You have the salaried employee and you have the commission-based employee. Now, the commission-based employee is fine for working at home because they're incentivized to close deals so they can make a commission. Now, a salaried employee is tougher because you don't physically see them working. You don't know, you can't track what they're doing. You don't really know how much time they're really putting into it. There's distractions at home, children, whatever it may be. It's tough to pay somebody their salary and not really see or be able to monitor what's going on because you can't physically see them.
It's funny you said that. I was speaking with a colleague I work with, and they were actually telling some of the employees they want to put cameras in the home on the computer. And he said, absolutely not. My children are running around and you're not going to have a camera on my face. So that's been a big issue. I've heard that people are saying, absolutely not. I'm not going to have a camera on me recording my in-house actions.
Exactly. So a lot of large corporations that have tons of leverage, everything is, they're running on tight margins and they need their employees back in the offices. They're trying to do what they can and renegotiate with their landlords and figuring out creative ways to maybe do 50% staff in the office space. They really want to get, and also it sparks, like when you're with people and you're talking and your ideas are flowing, you can't really do that on you can on a Zoom call, but it's difficult. And while you're working, energy is sparking. It's the environment is.
You definitely seem pro brick and mortar because you are. You want people out there. So.
Yes, I am pro brick and mortar. I mean, commercial real estate helps the economy flow. The dollars being spent on building, high rises and office buildings in downtown areas are really shaping, the way the economy flows. And a lot of office space is actually pretty expensive. So, they have elaborate build outs and now they have no one to use them. So it's kind of tough. We've seen some big leaders in the industry like WeWork. I don't know if you've heard of them. They lease large spaces and then they sublease to smaller companies, but have great work environments. And they've backed out of a lot of big deals in major cities across the US because they just don't know what's going to happen going forward.
I think the Boca Raton Tribune just put out a story as well that Amazon bought some space. I wasn't sure quite where. Maybe you know more than I do in Del Rey. So that follows your theory with the industrial space.
Yeah, I mean, that relates directly to retail. The retail market was disturbed long before COVID-19 occurred. You saw big box retail losing tons of money to online shopping and online ordering. And so less people were really needing to go to these big, large shopping centers. And now that we really can't be within 6 feet of each other, there's really no need to leave your house to do something that you can do online at your own convenience.
Well, let's do this because if we have people watching or this is rerun throughout the weeks, if anyone's watching, and this will go both to landlords and tenants, and I've worked with Steve Mossini on a number of deals, so I know we're dealing with both problems with the landlord and tenant issue. To give some advice, if you're about to renew a commercial lease or enter into a commercial lease, we'll go over some highlights of what should definitely be negotiated at this time. So I think you brought up one of them, which wasn't on my hot 6 list, but spacing. If you're in a current space and you can't afford to pay your rent, maybe one of the things you can negotiate is either moving to a bigger space at the same rent because you need more room. There's ways you can negotiate, or moving to a smaller space and reducing your rent because you have people working at home. Both of the things which Stephen just touched on, you might need more or less space. So that's maybe you want to hop your space. That could be a good negotiation tactic. Have you seen anything like that?
I've seen a lot of it. My office, we took on more space. We were too close quarters. We needed more space. We worked out a deal. Like you said, we took more space, same price, because the other tenants in the building are leaving and now the landlord has vacancy. So we used that to our advantage to get what we needed.
Right.
Now, it really depends on your business. Now, if you're a restaurant, you're highly affected by all of this, and you need more outdoor space than you really do indoor. So that whole aspect is going to change.
Right.
Retail stores, yeah.
Just before you go on that, one of our first programs here is we had on a number of Meisner shops, and they were negotiating with Meisner, which Meisner did at the time, to give more outside space. They were even going into the circle. So
yeah, Kapow and Dublin are moving into the street. Yep.
Right. And also, before I forget, notices. I wanted to touch on, this is something very easy to negotiate with a landlord and a tenant. If you're definitely not going to the office every day, you should negotiate or have a signed addendum that notices shouldn't be able to be posted at the premises. This benefits you both. If the landlord's sitting there posting notices, or that you're about to be sued or anything like that, and you're a tenant, guess what? You're not getting them. So I think definitely both parties should include a notice provision that notices go to an address where you're getting mail.
This is really a time where relationship and just talking through the problem instead of having because there are times where landlords and tenants don't really get along, and this is a time where it's beneficial for both parties to have a conversation, regardless if it goes anywhere. A cordial conversation, a plan put in place for both people, because a landlord at the end of the day doesn't want a ton of vacancy. There are benefits to having vacancies in certain aspects, depending on leverage and banking issues. But you want to have your tenants do well, and in turn that makes you money, obviously, as a landlord.
But if you can't, I agree. If you can't have that cordial relationship, definitely, because you want to do that before you get to the firm.
They better be calling you.
Right. And then I'm filing a lawsuit or defending, lawful eviction. We've been talking a lot on these panels about force majeure, and did COVID apply, and there's going to be litigation on that issue. But I want to put force majeure aside and negotiate on something that might be simpler under that. And you can let me know if this comes up in your leases. We have hurricane season coming up. So even if your landlord won't give you a deferred rent for COVID, you don't need that extra burden of being shut down just as you reopen for hurricane. So I think another simple negotiation tactic would be to add in the clause that if there's a power outage or this or that, maybe there can be a deferral of rent, or work something out, whether you're a landlord or a tenant, work out something that is really sort of beneficial to both sides, probably more beneficial to the tenant. But
I think every tenant should pull out that 100-page lease that they have and start going through it. There's a lot of key points that you and I could point out to really look for, but
I'm giving them 6 today.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, you and I have done this for years now, where I'll see something, bring it to your attention, and you'll see something, bring it to my attention. And so, there's so much language in there that most people don't understand. And reading them for so many years, we kind of get it and know exactly what to look for. But if your lease is coming up, or you're planning on signing a lease somewhere, you really just need to start reviewing it, looking it over, hiring a professional such yourself to go through it and make sure that you're protected. Obviously, a lease given by a landlord is going to be heavily weighed in their favor. So you need something to really help you protect yourself in events like this, and some things that you really can't control.
Well, I think that brings up, when you're saying protect yourself, that brings up the third point I wanted to do, which is a personal guarantee. Attached to most commercial leases is a personal guarantee, which is another point that actually you can completely negotiate. If you're already a reputable business, or depending on your credit, negotiate it. You can shorten it. If you're a landlord, there's ways that you can still be benefited or consider a shortened guarantee if it's reputable and they still have assets to recover. So that's another point to definitely look at. Why do you need to personally guarantee your business for the next 10 years? So
I've seen a lot of, well, you have your corporate landlords that have shareholders and, they have to report to certain people. So they need certain things in their lease that protect them, especially when they go to refinance or do any redevelopment, anything like that. But for some smaller landlords who aren't corporate and aren't publicly traded, I've seen recently a lot of, it's called a good guy clause, where you leave the space in good standing, you negotiate your exit, and maybe you forfeit a security deposit or an additional month, and you hand the keys back, no issues moving forward. So I've seen a lot of those kind of replacing the personal guarantee, but depending on your landlord, it may be something that you can't negotiate, but it is definitely negotiable.
also, are you dealing with a lot of leases where there's sort of a credit for a build out or a change? And if so, what are you seeing any changes with that?
So
what I mean is for people that are not in the commercial leasing business, is that sometimes you enter a lease and there might be a 6-month free rent period. So to allow the tenant to build out, simply that.
Yes. So the biggest industries in commercial that require the most amount of TI, tenant improvement dollars, are the restaurant, hospitality, hotel, event space sector, retail, if it's not like a boutique, something like that, and then office space. Warehouse, not so much, really just power upgrades. And, but besides that, definitely office, build out this elaborate workspace to compete with, Facebook's awesome sleeping pods and all that. But definitely the restaurant hospitality industry requires the most. For example, for about a 2,000 square foot restaurant space, to put in equipment and all that, you're looking at least $250,000 before you even do anything else.
And that brings me to my fifth point, by the way, just so I don't forget, is that if you're about to invest that kind of money in, think about when you're negotiating that you have a pretty secure renewal option. You don't want to be spending $250,000 and then your lease expires in 4 years. What's the point? Obviously, that's probably common sense, but when you're dealing with negotiating so many terms, you may not even have thought, you would just think, oh, I can keep renewing, but you really have to pay attention. Do you have the ability to renew, or can they just take that away from you? A lot of times they can take that away. So
to my long-winded explanation, to answer your question, I'm seeing less TI money, tenant improvement money, given from the landlord out, especially to a non-credit national tenant.
Right.
I'm seeing more free rent being given, but some landlords are adding that free rent period to the end of the lease. So technically, it's not free rent; it's an extension.
Because of COVID, or free rent just at the beginning of the lease as like
because there's a lot of approvals for build out. Cities are 50%, so things are taking more time. So landlords are understanding that a tenant is going to need an additional. In Boca specifically, city of Boca, permits were taking close to 6 to 8 weeks. Now it's probably double. So that's if the permit is done correctly, right?
If the permit is right, it's done correctly, yeah.
So it could be delayed even more.
Oh, we have a question for you, Steven. Do you see commercial real estate, mainly office space, recovering, or are we experiencing a new norm with people working from home? That's a great question.
So it kind of bounces off. Thanks, Gabe, for the question. It kind of bounces off what I was saying earlier between the salary and the commission employee. I do think that companies are going to be downsizing a lot of their office space. I mean, some are paying $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 right now in office space, and they have no one there. Right. So definitely see a downsize in office spaces for sure. There are probably going to be a lot more commission-based employees working from home naturally, because there's no need for them to come in the office in general. They don't need a desk anymore. Their phone, they can have a stipend from the company to pay for half their cell phone bill. But there's definitely going to be a new norm when it comes to that. It's going to be trying to figure out how to make it efficient for salaried employees to either work at home or come to the office maybe 3 days a week, and
or maybe rotate shifts or something.
Exactly. Yeah, there might be a night shift or a day shift.
We had a company on last week. I think it was with Heather Gilbert, and they were talking about coming in, if offices are staying open, coming in to help make it more efficient so people can go back to work and try to encourage that economy in locations where that can occur. So that was a good discussion last week. Oh, we have another question. Is it a good time to buy industrial warehouses?
Is this from Randy?
That's from Randy.
I'm not a salesy pushy person. It depends on your business, where you see yourself in 5 years, what your business plan is. If you're purely looking at investment, I think that it's something you should consider. If your business model can work in an industrial setting, yes. If you think that prices are going to go up, it really depends on the market that you're in. Some cities don't have a big industrial area, so the further south you go, there's a bigger presence and prices will stay lower. The further you go north, where it's very rare and there's not a lot, the prices are going to go higher.
Do you think the market's considering, because for example, Miami's somewhat shutting down a little bit, but for someone who's an investor, are they thinking that's temporary because they're looking at a long-term scheme? So that could be months, not years. So do you think people are thinking that way?
The industrial warehouse sector is not as affected as every other industry. You don't require, most of them are automated. UPS, FedEx, they're automated, and they have 100,000 square feet of warehouse space, and they're paying minimal, or they actually own the building, and they have employees just watching and making sure that things are being done correctly. And so, like I said, it really depends on your business model and your industry, but it's not really affected right now. And Miami, Fort Lauderdale, they're building industrial warehouses like crazy.
Right.
There's a whole thing with the Panama Canal being approved for more boats to be coming in. And so the hub, all the ports, west coast of Florida, east coast of Florida, those are all require people to work, but not to be close. So,
should we use a lawyer to negotiate a force majeure clause? Yes.
Yes. I think an attorney is required for any negotiation. Most agents and brokers, they're highly educated, but there are certain things that I may not be up to date on, law, code, provisions being changed daily, that someone like Hilary or another attorney in the industry that is in the know and attends those seminars and attends those things, those updates, and they get the updates from the Florida bar. It's definitely important. And I think you should, having a second set of eyes, me, someone else, and then a third set of eyes who knows the law, it pays for itself.
Because we've touched on leasing and purchase sale negotiations where I might be looking at, I've worked with Stephen Mossini, I might be looking at on the legal end, looking at these provisions, and he's coming to the process with a different set of eyes and catches things, in TI and other things like that, because he's thinking about, just has a different hat on. And together, it's like a full team because then you have the owner and the landlord and the tenant and your attorney and then your commercial broker, everyone trying to make this a good deal. So I think having a full team like that, and as well as you might need, your architect, your builder, anything.
Yeah. Honestly, you're protecting yourself, and it's, at the end of the day, it's really not a lot of money that you're spending to have an attorney do this type of work. It can get expensive, obviously, but in the beginning, that's when you really want to do it. And most people hire you after the process.
Right. I get called when there's the problem. If we would have just involved maybe for 2 to 3 hours to go over these leases, we could have caught it. And I wanted to bring up my number 6,
Okay.
which was the HVAC, which seems really funny. HVAC is a fancy word for a commercial air conditioning unit.
You and I talk about this a lot.
We talk about it a lot. I bring it up on this panel because I get so many calls on it. And when you're just doing a lease negotiation, say you're entering just a commercial lease for 3 years, and it has in there, a lot of times these are forms. And if the AC breaks, you're going to buy it, and maybe it's a $30,000 unit or something. Who would have thought to look at that provision? So anyone watching, please definitely take a look at who's responsible for the repairs, who's responsible for purchasing it. Because what if you inherited a property where the AC is just about to die and you step in? That would be a huge investment.
So I've done both sides of it. I've represented the landlord trying to make sure the tenant is responsible for that. And I've represented the tenant trying to make sure that the landlord can at least cover some of it. Right. Obviously, it depends on your landlord, but most corporate landlords, they put it on the tenant. And, that's a big expense, especially in year one when you're budgeting. And if you're, in retail or hospitality restaurant industry, the first 3 years of your business are the most crucial to make sure that you're going to make it. So if you have an expense of a 6-ton AC unit that costs about $1,000 a ton, or if you have to hook it up into the hydro system of the large property, I mean, you're looking at tens of thousands of dollars that you didn't even know and you just read over. So
right. So I think I can't believe 30 minutes have flown by this quickly.
Oh, wow.
It's crazy. So I just love talking about commercial leasing. So before we go, I'm glad we actually got the 6 items in that I wanted to get, which was talk about the guarantee agreements, the HVAC, AC, force majeure and hurricanes. Insurance. Always look at your insurance provision, because sometimes you might be overpaying, or it might be a form lease where it's asking you to pay for insurance items that are not even applicable to your type of business.
Make sure flood is in there. Flood insurance. Contents.
Notices. Make sure wherever notices are getting, that you're getting a copy. TI that Steve covered. And Steve, I this is called Boca's Briefcase. I'd like you to open your briefcase, and if you have one piece of value in closing that you haven't got to talk about, what would you like to share to people out there that might be considering investing or leasing a commercial property right now?
Okay. Well, the biggest thing, and I wrote it down here in big bold letters on my notes, if you haven't started thinking about a plan for what's going to happen, you need to do it now. Consult. If you're in a space and you need help moving somewhere, you need to call an agent. Don't try to do it yourself. You need representation. You need someone with experience. You need to put together a plan. If you're having issues, you need to speak with an attorney to figure out your plan of exit and then reentry, if that's what your plan is. But you need to get a plan in place.
And how can people reach you?
I left my information here, but my website is right there. There you go. Okay, you can follow me on Instagram, Facebook. I didn't leave a phone number, but I can if that's something you'd like to. Or okay, it's 561-789-6391. Very easy.
Great. It's like an infomercial. And then
exactly.
And if you need to reach me too, I can connect you with Steven. You already know me, the Zalman Law Firm. info@zalmanlawfirm.com. I just really appreciate you being here today. And again, thank you to the Boca Raton Tribune, because I just love these panels. I feel like they offer a lot of value to people that the hope is, to save money. This is not legal advice or professional advice. You obviously have to talk to your own team, but we're trying to encourage these discussions that you have when you're doing your own business. And follow the Boca Raton Tribune today, because I'm sure they're going to be covering an announcement with the Palm Beach County school system. I believe there is a meeting today that also occurred at the same time. So there's going to probably be an update regarding the schools starting in August 10th, remote or whatnot. So definitely follow back, check in with them, follow them on Facebook, and we will see you soon. Thank you so much. And again,
thank you for this opportunity.
Anytime. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. See ya.